Chapter 5 The Age of Industrialization. Q.1. Explain the following. A. Woman workers in Britain attacked the spinning jenny. B. In the 17th century, merchants from towns in Europe began employing peasants and artisans within the villages. C. The port of Surat declined by the end of the 18th century. D. The East India Company appointed Gomasthas to supervise the weavers in India. Ands. A. In Britain in the 19th century, the condition of workers was bad as mentioned below. 1. Abundance of labor affected the lives of the workers because the period of employment was less. 2. Sometimes the proportion of unemployment went up to between 35 and 75%. The fear of unemployment made workers hostile to the introduction of new technology. When the spinning jenny was introduced in the woolen industry, women who survived on hand spinning began attacking the new machines because the machine speeded up the spinning process and reduced labor demand, as by turning one single wheel a worker could set in motion a number of spindles and spin several threads at a time. This conflict over the introduction of spinning jenny continued for a long time. B. In the 17th century, merchants from towns in Europe began employing peasants and artisans within the villages due to following factors. 1. As a result of expansion of world trade and acquisition of colonies, demand for goods had increased significantly. The merchants, however, could not increase production in towns as the urban crafts and trade guilds were powerful. These were associations of producers that trained its people, maintained control over production, regulated competition and prices, and restricted the entry of new people into the trade. Rulers granted different guilds the monopoly right to produce and trade in specific products. It was, therefore, difficult for new merchants to set up business in towns. So they turned to countryside. 2. In the countryside the conditions were favorable for them because in the countryside, with the disappearance of open fields and enclosure of common lands, the peasants were in search of alternative sources of income. 3. Many peasants had tiny plots of land which could not provide work for all members of the household. 4. The peasants agreed to do work for the merchants because it was beneficial for them too, because they could remain in the countryside and could also cultivate their small plots of land. It enabled them to use full strength of their families as well. C. The port of Surat declined by the end of the 18th century due to the factors as mentioned below. 1. Before the age of machine industries, silk and cotton goods from India dominated the international market in textiles. 2. A vibrant sea trade operated through the main pre-colonial ports. Surat on the Gujarat coast connected India to the Gulf and Red Sea ports. 3. By the 1750s the network controlled by Indian merchants was breaking down as the European companies gradually gained power, including concessions from the local courts as well as the monopoly rights to trade. 4. While Hooghly and Surat decayed, Bombay and Calcutta grew because now trade was carried through the new ports and was carried in European ships. As a result of it, many of the old trading houses collapsed. Thus, export from Surat fell dramatically. In the last years of the 17th century, the gross value of trade that passed through Surat had been 16 million. By the 1740s, it declined to 3 million. D. The East India Company anointed Gomasthas to supervise weavers in India due to the one following factors. After establishing its political power in India, the company wanted to establish a monopoly, right to trade. It proceeded to develop a system of management and control that would eliminate competition, control costs and ensure regular supplies of cotton and silk goods. This it did through a series of steps. The most important step was to eliminate the existing traders and brokers connected with the cloth trade and establish a more direct control over the weaver. It appointed a paid servant called the Gomasthas to supervise weavers, collect supplies and examine the quality of cloth. The weavers who had taken advances from the company had to hand over the cloth they produced to the Gomasthas. Like and subscribe this channel.